Welcome, everybody, to another redeployment episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. We're going to redeployment this week because of the inclement weather in Texas, causing poor Dennis's power to go in and out nonstop and Jeff's internet to be unsuitable for recording. So this week, we're going to head on down to episode 94, where we speak with Mike Weigel about his grandfather's service in World War II, and he shares with us some previously unpublished photos of Hitler and other high-ranking members in the Nazi Party that Mike's grandfather found while in Germany. Please enjoy episode 94, and as always, please head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com, click on the Patreon link, sign up and subscribe. It goes a long way to help what we do here. And also, you can head over to YouTube.com, look up D410 Media, like, subscribe, share us with your friends. Thank you so much, and on to episode 94.
Digital 410 Productions proudly presents the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast with your hosts Dodd Abernathy, Jeff Copsetta, and Henry Sledge.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. I'm getting ahead of myself in my head. And if you weren't with us last week, shame on you. But more importantly, as you just heard Carrie say, the unofficial voice of the Digital 410 Network, the one and the only Henry Sledge is now a full-time member and host of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, your favorite World War II based podcast. Our muster has gotten larger. And joining us tonight, we'll get to in a second, because I'm going to let Jeff introduce him. But Jeff, you weren't here for last week. We kind of premiered a new segment, if you will. And right now I'm going to follow it up with another reading of by one and only Henry Sledge from his father's book, With the Old Breed. And here we go.
Our attack was called off late in the afternoon, and we were ordered to set up our mortar for the night. An NCO came by and told me to go with him and about 4 others from other platoons to unload an Amtrak bringing up supplies for Company K. We arrived at the designated place, dispersed a little so as to not draw fire, and waited for the Amtrak. In a few minutes it came clanking up in a swirl of white dust. "You guys from K Company 5th Marines?" asked the driver. "Yeah, you got chow and ammo for us?" asked our NCO. "Yeah, sure have. Got a unit of fire, water, and rations. Better get it unloaded as soon as you can or we'll draw fire," the driver said as his machine lurched to a halt and he climbed down. The tractor was an older model such as I had landed from on D-Day. It didn't have a drop tailgate, so we climbed aboard and hefted the heavy ammo boxes over the side and down onto the deck. "Let's go, boys," our NCO said as he and a couple of us climbed onto the tractor. I saw him gaze in amazement down into the cargo area of the tractor. At the bottom, wedged under a pile of ammo boxes, we saw one of those infernal 55-gallon oil drums of water. Filled, they weighed several hundred pounds. Our NCO rested his arms on the side of the tractor and remarked in an exasperated tone, "It took a bloody genius of a supply officer to do that. How in the hell are we supposed to get that drum out of there?"
So how you guys doing tonight?
Good.
Fantastic.
That was great. Yeah, shame on me for not being here last week. Last episode, man.
Did you hear the one?
That must have been a good one.
Last week.
Did you hear the one from last week? Should I play it? We got time, right? We're not in a big hurry.
Do it.
Here we go. It's a quick minute and 38 seconds.
Our artillery was called in, but our mortars could fire only to the front of the company and not on the left flank area, because that was in the area of the 1st Marines. The Japanese observers on the ridge had a clear, unobstructed view of us. Their artillery shells whined and shrieked, accompanied by the deadly whispering of the mortar shells. Enemy fire grew more intense until we were pinned down. We were getting the first bitter taste of Bloody Nose Ridge, and we had increasing compassion for the 1st Marines on our left who were battering squarely into it. When the enemy ceased firing artillery and mortars from caves, they shut protective steel doors and waited while our artillery, naval guns, and 81mm mortars blasted away at the rock. If we moved ahead under our protective fire support, the Japanese pinned us down and inflicted serious losses on us because it was almost impossible to dig a protective foxhole in the rock. No individual events of the attack stuck in my mind, Just the severe fire from our left and the feeling that any time the Japanese decided to do so, they could have blown us sky high.
Fantastic job on those, Henry. Doing a great job on those. We got plenty more coming,
That's a great
too.
addition.
So, Jeff, now's your time to shine. I'm very excited to announce Jeff has a very interesting guest on tonight. So take it away, fella.
Yeah, well, so his name's Mr. Mike Weigel. He's a good friend of mine now. We met a year or so ago. We are both shameless winos, and we met out here in Burnett, where I live, at the beautiful Seven Creeks Vineyards. And Mike is one of those guys that I don't think he's ever met a stranger. If he's there, you walk into the vineyard, you're going to get bear hugged, you're going to get introduced to 20 people. It's like you've known him your whole life. And before I let him introduce himself, I want him to tell a quick story, because he is the only person I think I will ever meet that actually has his own sushi roll named after him.
So I had a hot dog named after me, but not a sushi roll. I'm intrigued.
That's true. It's at Sushi Fever in Cedar Park, Texas. Actually, he came from Las Vegas, and I went in there. It had the same name. I was about to chew out whoever came out to Cedar Park and dared use that same name. But it was the same guy, and I just sat up there. He had a chef named Mario, and I would just sit up there on lunch breaks or with customers and just say, "Make me whatever." And one day he made this awesome roll, and I said, "Don't forget that one." So it took about a year. His wife, Amy, would not give me the name. She refused to have a roll called Mike Roll on their menu. But again, all those strangers that I know, I told them all about it, and it became so popular. He just couldn't not do it. So after about a year, his wife, I came in there one day and she said, "Look what we have up on the board." And there it is on the menu and up on the specials. I've got a Mike Roll.
I think they missed out on the better opportunity, which would have been the Weigel roll or the Weigel roll.
The Weigel roll. There we go.
Weigel roll.
Nobody would have been able to pronounce it.
There you go.
Except the Germans.
Well, what do you have for us tonight, Mike? I'm really excited. Of course, I already know, but this is something special. This really is.
Okay. So the man that we're going to be talking about is my grandpa. His name is Thomas Leander Colburn, TLC. He's Catholic from Denver, Colorado, born in 1924, December 18th, and left us on December 25th, 2015. So 91 years old, went out on Christmas like only he would. Army Master Sergeant, E8, U.S. Army, World War II. I can show you a picture of him real quick so everybody knows who we're talking about here. This is what he's going to look like. And he was 18 when he joined, and they called him Dusty Face because he was a tank driver. Apparently, they all got the dusty faces.
Yeah, the little slot on the front of the tank, they would just get that dust all over their face. They got their early football helmets on and their little grease guns. Those grease guns are so cool. Yep.
So I think probably, obviously, like lots of people in World War II, he's got a ton of stories. Our heritage is his grandpa moved from New York to Colorado, specifically Idaho Springs. He was a miner, a prominent miner. The big house in the middle of Idaho Springs has a big plaque on the front. It's his. His name was Cyrus Colburn. So we're descendants of miners from Colorado, basically. But this story, mostly, I think what Jeff wants to see is the pictures I showed him. And that story is, I'll read to you what my grandpa has at the beginning of these pictures. He says, "We drove our tanks into Nuremberg Stadium, lined our tanks up, and made a motor pool out of the area. As I jumped down from my front fender, I noticed that there were a bunch of photographs blowing around. After checking them out, I discovered that they were pictures of Hitler and all his gang. So I stuffed some in my tank and eventually brought some home. My mother took them to Ford Optical on 16th and Broadway. The man said that they should be put on professional negative film, which he did, and made some prints. And that's how all these copies that I'm going to show you were made.
And so your family still has the negatives too?
Yes.
That's
yep.
awesome.
So my aunts are really big into history and lineage. So between the four girls, they have all the pictures and all the stuff. All the cousins were also extremely interested in it. It spread around to all the people that were interested. I was the second oldest of the cousins, so I got a lot of the stuff. A lot of his pipe collection, a lot of his stuff out of his den, some swords from Germany that he took from the Nazis. I'll have to tell you guys about that some other time. And then also some of these pictures. So I can show you these. And
do you know off the top of your head, before you show us the photos, when he enlisted or was he drafted? What years did he serve through? Was he there the duration? Was he there from like 44 to 45 off the top of your head?
Yeah, so I looked at that, and I actually was going to get that information for you and didn't.
That's all right.
But I know basically that I have a story that he was saying where he was in basic training at the end of 44, I believe, beginning of 45, and then went out there. So I think he was there mostly in 45.
Makes sense.
Yep. Yeah, he was part of General Patton's tank army. So when he landed, they drove the tanks, all the way across Europe, and then ended in Nuremberg. And also, if you guys know the story of Camp Dora, one of the worst Jewish concentration camps, that was kind of towards the end of his career there. Which, pretty good story there too, since we're from Texas. Jeff and I are from Texas, so there's a book called the Search for Private Galleon, and he was a French guy in the U.S. Army, and got into some trouble around Camp Dora at a city, and ended up punching one of the German higher ups. They weren't supposed to be in town. Well, he ran out of town the wrong way and followed some railroad tracks and found Camp Dora, where the X-1 rocket was. And that's kind of the story how we beat the Russians to the missile. Yeah,
if Patton had his way, they would have went on into Russia right after the war, but they put a squash on that, sadly.
Yep, sure.
Let's see some of those photos.
All right, so you brought him up with the Nazi stormtroopers. So Ernst, I believe it's, is it Riem or Rome, was the head of that. So I'll show him to you first.
Sure.
Take this background off because it won't show you otherwise.
Wow. That's a great, what is that, like an 18 by 10? That's a great black and white photo.
Yeah, 8 by 10, yep.
8 by 10.
But we have the negatives too, so we could probably get better. I've shown these a lot, so. Yeah. Apparently Hitler had this guy killed.
What does that say on the bottom on this date? You have like a news clipping or something down there.
Yep, it says Adolf Hitler began his blood purge of political and military leaders in Germany. Among those killed was Ernst Röhm, leader of the Nazi stormtroopers and Hitler's one-time ally.
Wow.
All right, this is going to be Hermann Göring and Julius Streicher.
Wow. Basically looks like
what makes these so interesting too is this is like obviously not posed. These are just candid shots of these guys, and something you're not going to find probably anywhere else.
Yeah.
Nope.
For those of you listening on the audio version on Monday morning, we'll have some of these photos up on the website later on this week over at WTSPWorldWar2.com. But for those of you listening, that last photo, it's like they're at a propaganda event. Looks like they're either talking to Germans or to troops. The camera angle don't show who they're talking to, but you can kind of tell they're up on a podium, and one of them's throwing up the Heil Hitler salute, and the other one's standing next to him. And it's like a side, like Jeff was saying, it's not a posed propaganda photo. It's like the photographer was standing on the stage right or stage left, taking photos from off behind wherever they were, the podium they were doing their announcements from.
And I think that would be, this is the same stage.
Okay.
And this is actually of Hitler.
Yeah, they're like in a stadium.
Yep.
A big arena. Yeah, that's crazy.
Wow.
That's amazing. Yeah, it's so cool that the developer had the state of mind of taking those prints, taking them to the darkroom, and creating negatives for them, so that, you know, obviously photos that are 80 years old, you know, you can just print new copies as they start to get dog-eared and wrinkled and everything else. So it's great that they had the presence of mind to create new negatives from those prints.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think my grandpa kind of knew obviously the secrecy of that and having those. He actually built his own dark room in the basement. So he was able to make prints himself and look at all of that in his basement.
Yeah, sadly, I spent 8 semesters of high school doing black and white photography, and now we got digital cameras, so that was a waste of time.
They don't look as good.
No, they don't. But you know, I do computers for veterinarian clinics, and every once in a while I'll walk into one that they have the digital X-rays, but they still have some of their equipment they haven't taken out, and they would develop the X-rays with the same stop, bath, fix, and developer that we would in black and white photography. And so I'll walk in these rooms, and that fix or developer scent is just melted in the wall, and I'll have flashbacks going back to 1996 when I'm like in photography class in high school. It's just so weird how a particular smell can just take you back 25 years. It's insane.
They say that's the most powerful recall.
That and music. I think that's why they play music for Alzheimer's patients.
Really?
To help recall memories from the past. Because, plus with Alzheimer's, it seems to affect their short-term memory. Well, no, their long-term memory too. But yeah, they'll play music and do recalls. You have any other photos there, Mike?
Oh yeah, I got plenty. So this is going to be Julius Stryker again. He's got a couple horses there. It looks like they're in town somewhere.
Yeah.
Got some kids behind him. Soldier.
Now, who was Julius Stryker? What was his?
I'm pretty sure that was his right-hand man. That was like, he was always in the car with him, always on Hitler's right side.
Okay.
Might have to do some history on that.
I'm looking it up now if you want to go ahead and to your next photo.
Here's a really poignant one for you.
Yeah.
That could be on the cover of a book.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that looks like he's striking one of his famous poses.
Yeah, for those of you listening to the audio version, it's basically Adolf Hitler standing about 3 feet back from 4 microphones up on the same pedestal in that same arena. It almost looks like where they held the Olympics. Don't that look very reminiscent of the 1939 Olympics?
Does.
Would that be the Zeppelinstrasse in Nuremberg?
Quite possibly.
Possibly. I mean, that's where he found these.
I'm just... Sadly, most of the stuff I pull up on him is going to reference the Nuremberg trials, and so I'm not going to be able to give you a quick Wikipedia definition of who he was and what he did.
I know Hermann Göring was definitely his right-hand man as well, which I've got some pictures of him too. This is going to be, I'm not sure who the guy in the black, that might just be somebody pouring them a drink. But there's some interesting stuff on their clothing. But this is Rehm, the guy that's head of the Nazi stormtroopers.
Those are amazing photos.
Here's Göring.
Yeah, he actually has his sword on that you were making reference to earlier.
Yep. Yeah, I don't have that in the house, or I'd show it to you. Maybe I'll send you a picture of it that you can add, but I have one off of one of the soldiers that my grandpa got.
Wait a minute, what arena did you say that he was in? The Nuremberg arena?
Yep.
I wonder if that's where this photo... It would make sense if that's where those photos were taken.
Yep, that's what I'm guessing.
Yeah, so that would definitely make sense.
This is another one, just a candid picture of Hitler, kind of in the background there.
Yeah, he's like reviewing the troops.
Yep. And I'm not sure what kind of soldier that is in all the black. That might be part of their stormtroopers.
Okay, let's see here. Julius Streicher, February 12th, 1885 to 16th of October, 1946, was a member of the Nazi Party, the German word that stands for regional leader. Member of the Reichstag, national legislator. He was the founder and publisher of the newspaper Der Stürmer, which became a central element of the Nazi propaganda machine. The publishing firm was financially very successful and made Streicher a multi-millionaire, and that's a multi-millionaire in 1940s era, so that's a lot of money. Now, at the end of the war, Streicher was convicted by crimes against humanity in the Nuremberg trials, good, and was executed, fantastic. Streicher was the first member of the Nazi regime held accountable for inciting genocide by the Nuremberg tribunal, so he was definitely a blank of all large caliber. Let's see here. Born, blah, blah, blah. 9 children of a teacher. I'm sure his mom was proud. He worked in elementary school. His father, he worked at the elementary school. His father had 1913. Streicher married some other chick. A baker's daughter in Nuremberg. They had 2 sons, yada, yada, yada. But yeah, I'll include the link to his Wikipedia page. It took me a while to figure out the correct German spelling. That's what took so long. So for this episode, head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com, and I will include the link to the in-depth Wikipedia on Mr. Streicher.
This is definitely the stadium. It's marked as Nuremberg Stadium, but that podium looks a little different from what we were looking at earlier.
Sure. Well, they may have had them up on a riser so they can get a little higher up because there's a lot of people there. And just imagine, I mean, in 1939, 1940s technology of PA systems, which weren't that great, in a place that large with that much marble, I'm sure it was quite hard for the people in the crowd to understand exactly what was going on. A lot of echoing.
Absolutely. Here's a salute from Adolf Hitler out of his car.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's the, was that a Rolls Royce? I can't remember.
It looks...
Wouldn't be a
It looks like
the horse or
no, it's a Mercedes. It's got the Mercedes
it looks like
logo.
a Mercedes to me.
Yeah, I forget what they called that thing.
Yeah, that's it.
Yep, it's a Mercedes. Got the cat with the SS behind him. See, some of those other guys, they're.
Wait a minute, Mike.
What?
Don't you drive a Mercedes?
I do.
Hey, to the victors go the spoils. I have a Volkswagen and a Toyota, so to the victors goes the spoils. No, I was going to say, if you hold that photo back up, I noticed this in some of the other ones. Doesn't the headgear on the guy to the front and to the back of the car almost look like a French-style headgear of the French uniforms?
You talking about this guy?
Yeah. No, not the helmet. That's clearly German, but the guy in the back.
Probably looks like a kepi.
Yeah, they almost look like French kepis. It's crazy. Probably had a lot of similar uniforms back then, I would assume. That's Goring there in the white, ain't it?
Yep.
Yeah, I wonder who that photographer was. He clearly had like more than just clearance. He was almost like he's probably like an official member of their propaganda machine. Because I mean, he was just there.
Here's Streicher and Goring together. And on
The microphone stand, you can kind of see the call letters of the radio station.
It says TEKADE.
So DE's Deutschland. What was it again?
TE Tango Echo Kilo 4, number 4. And then DE Delta Echo.
Yeah, just interesting. It's crazy to, it's crazy to think that he was able to capture so many photos. I mean, that's more than just a handful. He had to cram them in his tank underneath the seat or somewhere. But, you see things like that, and you're just so grateful that people think to preserve history. And to him,
Absolutely.
And to him, it really wasn't history. It was, happening right now. But he had the foresight to think this will be valuable, not monetarily, well, possibly monetarily, but historically valuable in the future.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so crazy to see unpublished photos like these.
Mm-hmm.
There's the kind of equipment they were using.
Yeah, so there's a photographer who's taken a photo op, we're going to say stage right, and then our embedded photographer stage left. And so everybody's got their heads away from him looking at the other photographer, and he's kind of taking a picture of them getting their picture taken.
Mm-hmm.
Those are crazy.
And there's a plane in the back of this one, Jeff. Don't get too excited. Not sure what kind.
JU-52, isn't it?
No, what's the ones they
Is
would
it
use?
a you, Jeff?
It looks like
I couldn't get a good enough glimpse of it.
it kind of looks
If
like
it's a tri-motor, it's probably a JU-52.
Oh yeah, I would go with that. Yeah.
It's hard to tell, though.
Yeah, it does. I just Googled JU-52, and I was going to say it kind of looks like the planes you would see in Indiana Jones when the Nazis or the Germans were flying them. Yeah, it looks like a JU-52.
Yeah. Let's see. So, in addition, he was also there with his brothers when they got back. This was them in the Denver Post.
Nice.
That's my grandpa right there. But him and his brothers came back and then went back to the mines.
Yeah, it was so cool back then how the local papers would do write-ups on the people from their towns, and obviously Henry knew a lot about that because some of the stories, news stories about his father. But one of the things that in that Dick Winters Hang Tough book, that he made references in his letters or when Dieta wrote them about how in Pennsylvania they would do news stories on him and his exploits. And so it's really cool how, like, back then the small towns were so small that if you're in a position of a Dick Winters or you came back, you could kind of become a local celebrity because you're commanding a group of guys who's doing all these things over in Europe, and it gets put on the wire, and then the local news turns it into the local boy done good. So it's really cool that they did that back then.
Yep.
That still exists in small towns today.
Yeah.
Yep. I kept all the rated R ones out of here, but this is kind of what some of the places they would come up to when they were taking their pictures after they would take over the town or whatever. Just be, dead bodies everywhere.
Yeah.
And I'll leave I have a whole bunch of concentration camp ones, but we'll leave them off this one.
Yeah, we wouldn't want YouTube to kill our live stream. Well, I appreciate you sharing those photos with us. Those are fantastic, and that's just super awesome. You have any more, or are you good?
Of that stuff, that's it for that.
Cool. Well, you're more than welcome to hang out for the rest of the show, and then contribute to the conversation, or crack wise, do whatever you want to do. And I know Jeff and Henry I think you guys want to do some Air Corps stuff. But real quick before we continue on to ETO talk, last week I talked about the book about the Marine Raiders, and we were talking about, hey guys, you ever read a book and see them mention another book, and you go out and buy that book? And of course we all said yes. I got this in the mail. Don't mind my toilet paper bookmark, but in that book by the Marine Raiders, they kept making references to Samuel Griffith II. And so I quickly Googled his book, and he put out this book called The Battle for Guadalcanal. And this book covers everything from the Air Corps' contribution to the Navy's contribution, and obviously the Marine Corps. It really gets into the fact of how Guadalcanal was put together at the last minute on shoestring, how they had no maps of anything. They basically got as many people who used to work on the coconut plantation, sailors, whatever, to provide as much information. I think they actually went to old books that had maps. But anyhow, two things that's very cool, kind of sad but cool. This book has barcodes all over it, and on the opening cover, it has Yeshiva University, the libraries. This is from the Siegfried Stern Library. It's got their college library logo on it. Of course, you can't see it because of my WTSP wallpaper. But this is probably more of a throwback for Henry and I. Check us out, Henry. It actually has the checkout card in the back that we'd all fill out.
Yeah.
Showing that we checked out the book.
Did you stamp it?
Yeah, they put a brand new one in here. Sadly, you can't see the history of the people. This was published in 1954. Now, I learned something cool, and I'm only on like chapter 2. We're all familiar with John McCain's contributions to Vietnam, right?
Right.
Do you know anything about his father?
Yeah, he was Admiral 5th Fleet, was he not?
I was reading his book, and it kept...
Was that his grandfather?
That was his father, interestingly
Okay.
enough. I was reading his book, and I kept saying John McCain. And I'm like, wait a minute, John McCain's in Vietnam. So I quickly looked. John Sidney Slew McCain, August 9th, 1884 to September 6th, 1945. If you're doing the math, yes, he passed away shortly after the surrender. Was a U.S. Navy admiral, U.S. Navy admiral. He served command assignments during the Pacific War campaign. McCain was a pioneer of aircraft carrier operations, serving in the Pacific Theater World War II. In 1942, he commanded the land-based air operations in support of the Guadalcanal campaign. So he was responsible for the logistics, getting a hold of as much of the airplanes as he could, putting it together, calling in all the basic air operations over Guadalcanal. And in 1945, he aggressively led Fast Carrier Task Force, his operations off the Philippines and Okinawa, and airstrikes against the Japanese home island caused tremendous destruction. The Japanese naval and air forces closing the period of the war. He died 4 days after the formal Japanese surrender. And I think John McCain was born in like 43 or 39. And it's just amazing that John McCain, his son, would go on to do all the Vietnam Navy exploits that his father kind of started, even though he really didn't have that much interaction because his dad died in 45. And so it's always crazy to me that people that we hear about, and the impact they had on history, and the fact that he was like trying to put together a logistics air operations for Guadalcanal as everybody's struggling to get gear, equipment, men, logistics, and everything. And it's just, so this is a great book, and I'm like early into it. So if you guys listening are into Guadalcanal, here's another great book. It was published in 1953, The Battle for Guadalcanal. And the cool thing about this is Samuel reached out and got some, obviously through interpreters, but he actually got contributions for his book from Japanese military leaders who served on Guadalcanal in those areas. So when he's giving facts about troop movements on the Japanese side, he not only got that from reports, but he got that from firsthand accounts from the people who were there serving on the Japanese side. So it's a pretty in-depth book. And so that's another one to check out. And what are you guys wanting to talk about tonight, Jeff or Henry?
Yeah, well, Don, you'll appreciate this. I got a few things added to my collection here in the past couple days, I guess.
Sure.
I'm sure y'all are familiar with the green hardcover U.S. Army and World War II books.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I have no idea how many is in the whole series. I had 2 of them. One of them being Guadalcanal, the First Offensive. As a kid, I was obsessed with Guadalcanal. And I just inherited 6, Battle of the Bulge, Mediterranean Theater, One on War in the Pacific, the Fall of the Philippines. I haven't even been able to thumb through them, but these are the ones that were printed more like in the 50s.
Yeah.
The one I bought was much newer. So these are pretty old. And they have the old library. They came out of the library years and years ago, were withdrawn, and they still have the library cards in them as well.
It kind of hurts my heart. This one actually had, not to interrupt you, but on that point, it hurts my heart. This one has a discard stamp on it. It's like, oh,
yeah,
to be discarded.
That's okay. It's,
yep. Got my hands
discarded from a library, but now it's found a new home.
Sure.
Then I came across about a half dozen cameras like new.
Wow.
Probably most of them from the early 50s. Kodak, Argus, a couple Bell and Howells, a Bell and Howell projector that still works, pristine. Couldn't get the lid open, and finally got into it, and it is like new. and with the one Argus, 3 boxes of the original flash bulbs.
Wow.
So that was a pretty cool find. And I've got there's some friends, some reenactor friends. I think I'm going to give a couple to, some of the girls that do photojournalism, World War II, female journalists, things like that. And I'll keep 1 or 2. My wife wants to keep 1 or 2, and probably leave the rest at the museum here in Burnett, which I'd like to shamelessly plug real quick.
Yeah, please go ahead.
6 days away from our public program for kids. We're calling it Pumpkins and Paratroopers. So
seasonal, I like it.
Yeah. So if we have any local listeners, basically it's we did our summer program, which was our wine and wings, that we included our local winery here that Mike and I enjoy so much. And I wanted to do something for the kiddos in the fall, so we decided to do a pumpkin decorating contest. We've got one of the greatest grocery stores in the country, probably one of the best corporations to work for in the country, HEB, donated 100 pumpkins to me.
Wow. And
we had some local art teachers and some other folks involved with the school system that are donating all the paints and the tablecloths and a wash station. And we've got a shaved ice truck that's going to come out. I've got a buddy that owns a BRDM, a modern armored vehicle. He's going to bring that up for kids to play in. And we're just going to set up for 2 hours out in our static aircraft field outside the museum there, out by the highway. And I'm hoping to have 100 kids. We kind of paired with our local library that has a huge following for the children because of their children, story time and their summer programs and everything. So they've been really helping us advertise hard, and it's been kind of a blending all of this stuff together because this past Tuesday, I was unanimously voted to be on the executive board for this library. Hopefully I can do them some good. So we're just kind of getting this community involvement between the historical aspect of our library, the programs that they do. It's more than just a big old building full of books. And of course, our museum here in Burnett that's trying to keep history alive. And we're going to have some reenactors, of course, a couple guys dressed as paratroopers, so I can get away with that catchy title where people aren't let down.
And then we're going to carve jack-o'-lanterns with. Then we're going to carve jack-o'-lanterns with fighting knives.
There you go. Yeah.
I've got to come see this BRDM. That's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah, it's the same guy that he's got a DeLorean as well that he brings out. He's had a few other military vehicles in the collection that have come and gone. So yeah, make sure you come on out, Mike. But no, sticking with PTO. I know Sledgehammer here will enjoy this. I've got to talk to him when I first picked this book up. I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. It's done. I mean, I read it that quick. And I'm not a quick reader. I thought it was really good, and it's one of those books that it's just a pretty good account. If you want to just know the basic stuff about Peleliu, if you kind of want to know a little bit about men like Sledge and Snafu and Bergen and Haldane, there's probably I don't know how many inaccuracies there are. I picked up on a couple pretty blatant ones. Yeah. So of course, that kind of usually that turns me off. I mean, sometimes it's more of a it's not even really the author's fault. To me, sometimes they just kind of get something in editing, things kind of get a little out of chronological order. They actually, there's a mistake where they, instead of September 16th, it says December 16th at one point. But other than that, and I know Henry here can probably shed a little bit more light because he's more familiar with the book and the author. But overall, not to pick anything apart, overall, I thought it was a really good, just kind of an all-encompassing. If you want to know a little bit about what Peleliu was like, I think this guy does a pretty good job, at least shedding light to what it was like, and the way K35 just got so stretched out. These guys just got put through the ringer. I don't know if everything when he quotes Henry's dad, if it's 100% correct, or if Snafu would have said something like that I'm not familiar with, but I think it's a really good book. It was a quick read for me. And I just wanted to kind of do that in our little book review. And I picked this one up this morning Dumb But Lucky, written by this guy, Richard K. Curtis. This came out of the collection from our local P-51 pilot that we had here that unfortunately crashed a couple years ago. I inherited a couple hundred of his books from his collection and some other aviation curios and relics, things like that. And I'm excited to finish this one because I do want to plug before I turn it over to Henry that I think we're all in agreement that, we're coming up on our 100th episode. And of course, that's 100 episodes for Don. That's not necessarily 100 for Henry.
Well, it's 100 for the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. I think this is going to be episode 94 that we're on right now. So, yeah, we quickly have 100 coming our way.
Yeah, we're getting close, and we're really gaining a lot of steam with all of the material that we're putting together and these guests that we're coming across. And so for our listeners to kind of whet the appetite, I suggested that we kind of do a little bit of a tribute for our 100th episode. We do a little bit of a tribute to the 100th bomb group because Henry and I are just, we're mighty 8th Air Force nuts, and we're going to bring Don. We're going to get Don over here on the dark side. I know he got to dress up all Memphis Belle style once or twice, but it's fun talking about ETO, and it's fun, especially for Henry and I to go back and talk about some of the things that, the same books we've read and the same movies we've seen. And so I'm looking forward to that. If that idea sticks, I'm really looking forward to that. And I hope our listeners will engage. I'd love to hear from some of them ahead of time, some of the things that they'd like for us to talk about.
Yeah, and please, if you guys have questions, comments, concerns, please email us at mailcall@WTSPWorldWar2.com. And before you segue off that, because you mentioned something about that book, how there may have been some editorial inaccuracies, and I would be remiss when I posted last week's episode about how I was talking about how great the book, the Marine Raiders was. A listener, not only a listener, but a former guest of the show who's actually been to Peleliu, reached out to me and said, "Hey, that book was written from 30 miles away and had some editorial stuff." And I quickly said, "Well, I'd like to see some of," and he did. He sent me a screenshot, very first page, and this is something I didn't even notice. But chapter 1, the Factory Guard, December 15th, 1942. December 15th, 1942, halfway down the paragraph, it says, it had only been a few days since the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor, which obviously would have been December 15th, 1941. But interestingly enough, when I started reading this book, December 15th, 1942 was when they had the meeting that the idea for the Raiders was hatched. So I think the editorial person, the person editing the book, put December 15th, 1942, because it was probably a date that they were supposed to put earlier. But go ahead, Jeff.
Well, maybe I misheard you there, but I know the 1st Raider Battalion hit Tulagi on August 7th of 42. Unless that's strictly on the 2nd Raider Battalion, Carlson's Raiders.
I was flipping through here, and I thought I had actually taken a photo. So that's why when you were talking, I was so rudely looking at my cell phone. Because when I was reading this, I was like, well, wait a minute, that makes sense. But I'll have to find it, and we'll retouch on it in the next episode. But
yeah, for sure. Because 1st Raider Battalion, I think it was Baker Company that set foot first. They actually hit Tulagi, which was like a little Japanese seaplane float plane base or whatever, just north of Guadalcanal. They actually hit in Tulagi.
No, you're right.
Before 1st Mardiv stepped foot on Guadalcanal.
They
kind of were the first of the first offensive.
Yeah, you're right. It would have been December 15th, 1941, because we landed on Guadalcanal on August 7th, 1942. So obviously December, but it would have been 1941. But yeah, it was just interesting that was one of the things he pointed out was inaccuracies in dates and things like that, which once again, probably not so much from the author, but who the editorial and the publisher's job it is to check things out like that. But once again, I think it was a great book. I did reach out to the author. She does have a book that you and Henry will probably be interested in called The Coffin Corner Boys, and it's about the Army Air Corps. So that would be a pretty good one.
That'd be the low squadron group?
Probably. When I was going to the publisher trying to get contact information to book her on the show, it just showed the Marine Raiders book and then that one. I'm Googling it right now.
Yeah, and I forgot to mention, I keep forgetting about just strictly our audio listeners and not people watching. I
Yep.
held this book up the whole time I was talking about it, but it's Brotherhood of Heroes, The Marines at Peleliu, 1944, The Bloodiest Battle of the Pacific War by Bill Sloan, who is right down the road from me here in Dallas, Texas. So
Yes,
that was the
Did I
Peleliu book
mention
was talking about.
you and I talked about that? I thought did I mention in 2006 I went out to visit Bergen, and we got to talking because I think that around then was when Bill was putting that book out, and Bergen got him on the phone. I talked to him briefly. So
No, I don't
we
think
had a
it-
nice conversation.
I'm
Yeah,
assuming everybody's read this book
What is that? Duty?
by Bob Greene. It's about Paul Tibbets.
No, I have not read that
Oh.
book.
I have not read that.
This is a fantastic, absolute must read. It's Bob Greene, the journalist. His dad was neighbors with Paul Tibbets, and he basically got to sit down and talk to him. For anybody that's listening that doesn't know, he was the pilot of the Enola Gay that ended the war. But that's a great book if you guys haven't read that.
Yeah, we'll have to add it to the list. But go ahead, Jeff. You can. You were getting ready to take your conversation elsewhere, but I wanted to put a fine point on it because of the inaccuracy I want to bring up.
No, that's it. No, I just wanted to make sure I mentioned the title for the audio listeners. But yeah, Henry, what do you got? What are you reading?
Well, I was thinking, when Don texted me and said, "Hey, we've done some Pacific stuff. Why don't you and Jeff jump in there and do something on the Army Air Corps?" I got to thinking about it. We talk about Guadalcanal and how can you not? But August of 42, as we just said, I went back and reread the Osprey book. Jeff, we talk about how much we like the Osprey series books on B-17 units of the 8th Air Force. And of course, I'm in the middle of reading Strongmen Armed. But when Don said, "Hey, let's do something, let's talk about Army Air Corps stuff," I quickly took a side tour and reread the Osprey book on B-17s. I didn't know that it was August of 42 when they started daylight bombing in Germany, from England to France first.
Right.
But so two cataclysmic offensives starting off in August of 1942.
Mm-hmm.
But just going through that, and also because Mike brought up Paul Tibbets, his name came up several times because he was just a young officer riding right seat in some of those first missions.
Yeah, he was in B-17s for the 29s for sure.
Yeah. So,
Yep.
But I mean, to think about, and the B-17 offensive is something that's always been really fascinating to me. I mean, that was really our first chance to start hitting back, in the European theater. And the Collings Foundation had a B-17 that they flew in here to the Birmingham area. It was 909. It actually crashed a few years ago, and tragically several people died in that accident. But I walked through that airplane more than once when they brought it here. And, you think about, people say, well, the B-17 was the Flying Fortress. I mean, it's iconic. And I guess it was a big airplane, but man, when you get inside the fuselage of that thing, and when you think about being trussed up in all your flight gear and with a parachute, chest pack, back, whatever, and you're in there with all as a waist gunner, imagine Focke-Wulf 190s just raining down on you, putting, 12.7 millimeter machine gun fire, or 7.9 millimeter, whatever they had, 20 millimeter cannon rounds. I mean, it just had to be absolutely horrific to live through a mission in one of those things.
Much like a submarine or tank, for that matter, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah.
And it's a flying fortress when you're 5'3" and 87 pounds. And I was going to say that to Mike, I'm sure your grandfather's probably a short fella, because I know the guys who run World War II armor down here, and me being 6'5", I can't fit in those tanks. So it's definitely a tight squeeze.
Yeah, he's. I think he was 5'10", 5'11".
Wow. Okay.
Same height as me.
Was he in M4s?
I don't know that. I'll have to ask for you.
I'm going to we're going to change things up here real quickly. I'm going to take something I do on the What's in Your Head podcast when we do movies reviews. In my computer's office and in here, I have a Roku TV. And so when I'm at the shop and working on computers, I just turn on Roku, and I'm finding a lot of World War II movies One I just started watching. I'll talk about next week, and it's actually a movie that has Ethan Hawke and a young Gary Sinise before Saving Private Ryan. It's an interesting movie, but I don't know if did I talk about When Trumpets Fade on this podcast? I don't think I did.
I haven't heard you.
I think I might have brought up to Jeff, but anyhow, I was on a Roku, and I'll just play it and then I'll get into it. Oh, sorry about that. I'm trying to. For those who don't know, that's the Roku sound effect. So, 1998.
He was a reluctant soldier.
If I can help you in any way without endangering my own life, I won't hesitate. But I'm not taking a bullet for anybody. That's not good enough. That's as good as it gets.
A reluctant leader.
Congratulations, Private or Sergeant. I am absolutely the wrong man.
You managed to stay alive for a week. That's something the rest of your platoon couldn't do. Call me crazy, but from where I'm standing, that makes you qualified for the job.
But in the heat of battle, he became a reluctant hero.
You're gonna make it! You can do this. Mr. Suicide!
Even when the glory of war fades into the horror of battle, an ordinary man can become a hero.
You don't know, Bobby. I'm going home.
HBO Home Video presents an epic true story, When Trumpets Fade.
What's your name? Warren. Welcome to Death Factory, Warren.
From director John Irvin of Hamburger Hill and The Dogs of War comes the movie the Washington Post called First Class. Powerful, suspenseful, and shocking. Masterful, said Variety. A war picture that earns its stripes, declared People Weekly. When Trumpets Fade, starring Ron Elder of Deep Impact and The Last Supper, Frank Whaley of Broken Arrow and Pulp Fiction.
1998 HBO television movie directed by John Irving, as you just heard. Keep in mind, Band of Brothers came out in 2001. So this is 1998. This movie is so old that at the beginning, it's HBO New York Productions, not even HBO.
Wow.
I don't know where this thing was shot. Maybe somewhere in the woods in New York. It's super raw. It's like I said, it's super raw. It doesn't hold back on the horrors of war. Interestingly enough, one of the actors who doesn't get even a film credit is Timothy Olyphant, who you guys probably know from Deadwood as Sheriff Bullock and Justified. Didn't do a great acting job in this, but it's interesting to see him at like 19. This movie is, it's good. I don't want to say it's like a great World War II movie, but it's a good World War II movie that you probably don't know anything about. But here's just a quick plot. Private David Manning is a soldier of the 28th Infantry Division, and as a result of his horrendous fighting in the Battle of Hurtgen Forest, he is the sole survivor of his platoon. Manning is assigned to lead a squad of Green replacements and promoted to sergeant. He tries to get out of it, saying he's unqualified for the position, but his company commander, Captain Roy Pritchett, thinks otherwise. Manning tries to back out of the responsibility by asking to be discharged under Section 8. And one of the plots of the movie is his commander said, fine, if you take these guys, go up here and take out the 88s. When you get back, I'll give you your Section 8. Unbeknownst to him, that commander dies during the attack, so he didn't get his Section 8. But there's a flamethrower scene in this movie, and as Jeff knows, who's worked very close with flamethrowers, this is 1998. This isn't CGI computers. This had been a huge budget for HBO because the battle scenes, they got explosions going off. They have tree bursts that rival Band of Brothers. And this is a few years beforehand. I mean, it almost looked like they put cameras in the woods in New York and had a demolition expert come strap some dynamite to these trees and just blow the living hell out of them. Like I said, the plots, it's supposed to be based on a true story. I won't get into some of the uniform things that drive living historians crazy. Look past that. But if you guys have Roku and you're looking for a movie that you've probably never seen, and it's nice to see a movie with a plot around Hurtgen Forest. It doesn't get brought up a lot in movies too much. And plus the idea that this was put out by HBO just a few short years before they started production on Band of Brothers. It's a raw, rugged movie. I want to say special effects, but the pyrotechnic, the battles, it's It's pretty good. So if you're looking for just something to watch when nothing else is on and you have Roku, or I'm sure you can find it otherwhere, but it's called When Trumpets Fade. It was interesting enough that I would watch it a second time. But to me, it's just interesting of how it was made, because nowadays with all these movies, regardless of World War II, they rely so heavily on computer graphics, and this was just old-fashioned, going out in the woods and let's just blow shit up and film a military movie.
Donna, I'm with you on. I mean, the Hurtgen Forest. I've read several books on that, and to me, of course, obviously the Ardennes, Battle of the Bulge. I mean, that takes a huge amount of attention, as it should. But man, Hurtgen Forest was a killing field.
Now, Jeff, you've worked around flamethrowers. You know the heat they put off. This scene, this cat is running. The actor, not even a stuntman, because they basically have the camera on one of those tracks, and then they're just running. As he's running full force, just spraying the shit out of the set with this flamethrower. I mean, I don't know what the lawyers are thinking, but just the flamethrower scene in itself is crazy. And of course, once again, this is 1998, and so they have stuntmen covered in the flammable gel running on fire instead of the computer graphics. This movie is raw and rugged, and you definitely might want to check it out.
I've been trying to bite my tongue since you've been talking about it. I've seen this movie. I cringe hearing you talk about this movie like it's good.
I didn't say it's a great movie. I said it's an interesting raw movie to see that HBO put out. I didn't say it's a great movie.
It's hurting my heart to hear this.
When's the last time you've seen it, though?
Oh, not that long ago. Probably last year sometime.
You know the thing that drove me absolute effing crazy? And like I said, I'm not saying it's a fantastic movie. I'm just saying it's an interesting, raw movie. The one thing that drove me absolutely crazy, I don't know who the wardrobe department guy is, but the fact that everybody had Jeep caps on backwards, even when they didn't have their helmets on, and they weren't even real Jeep caps with the they were prop made ones. So instead of having the ear flaps, they just had the lines. So, but they all had them backwards. And they looked like Robin Hood hats. It just drove me.
This is what I'll say about this, because I mean, besides all of that stuff, whatever. I look past a lot of that. I try to, unless we bring it up on purpose, but I try to look past a lot of that stuff. What this movie reminds me of is it's just a bunch of civilians that wanted to. It's almost like this movie should be more like Vietnam. With a lot more artistic license to just catch stuff on fire, blow stuff up.
That's exactly what it was.
1,000 times, and not really. The plot is.
It's
a
weak.
good enough plot. I think it's a good enough story, but you're not going to learn anything at all.
No, not at all.
I mean, it's just they took a Vietnam context civilian-based film and set it in the Hurtgen Forest, almost like they would. Never heard of that. Let's pick that as our location.
Like I said it was a raw movie, and it's interesting to see that it's something HBO did before Band of Brothers. I never said it was a great movie, but it's just something to check out if you want a good laugh. Like I said, Timothy Olyphant, his acting was horrible in that, and the fact that he went on to do Deadwood and Justified.
I like him
too.
He's done some great voiceover work too. I mean, the guy, he's very talented. I do like him as an actor, and that. You got to start somewhere, I guess. Henry, watch that movie, and then let's talk about it.
But you have to admit, like I said, when they're doing the tree bursts, like you said, it definitely looks like when all the shelling's coming in and they're blowing crap up, it does look very Hamburger Hill or Platoonish. And but it was just, I don't know. I saw it, I watched it, I'm like, wow, it's rugged and raw, and it's just interesting to see how far HBO came in those few short years between that and Band of Brothers.
And wasn't it directed? Wasn't it the same director as Hamburger Hill?
Yes, it was. Which would go to your thing about the it looking like a Vietnam flick.
It's another Hamburger Hill, which was a pretty decent movie, just with dudes in World War II uniforms.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah. Anyway. Cool. I'll go watch Thin Red Line again before.
I would if I could find it for free. I'm not paying the $3 to watch Netflix. Mike, have you ever seen The Thin Red Line? Okay, don't.
I have not.
You're good. You're good.
It's the most disappointing Guadalcanal-based movie out there, but the joke is Henry's a fan of it.
You know, I mean, look, they actually did film some of it on Guadalcanal.
Cool.
So,
I've only seen the big ones: Saving Private Ryan, Band of Brothers. You know,
The
Fury.
Pacific.
Fury. I did see
watch
that.
Pacific.
Did see that.
Well, the fact that it had Sean Penn in it, Michael Rappaport, Nick Nolte, it had a star-studded cast, but just like the storyline, you're like, what is this?
no, I believe me, it's an acquired taste.
1998. I guess.
Yeah, it came out the same year as Saving Private Ryan.
It also came out the same year as When Trumpets Fade, so I guess it's definitely a more substantial movie.
I don't know if I've seen When
Ryan was
Trumpets Fade or
96.
not.
What's that?
I thought Saving Private Ryan was 96. It's 98.
No, 98.
Really?
98.
Yeah.
I'm learning a thin red line. I can tell you for a fact it's 1998. Saving Private Ryan.
Because Saving Private Ryan got all the attention, which it should have.
Yeah,
'cause it was
1998. Yep.
obviously a better movie, but
Schindler's List too. That was good.
yeah.
I think that should be required watching in high school history.
Absolutely.
Schindler's List.
They would never allow that.
No, especially now. But definitely think that should be required watching. Henry, do you got anything coming up that you want to plug? I know you're hitting the circuit a lot lately and doing a lot of stuff here and there.
Well, I'm going to be on Mitchell Bell's podcast, but you guys are too, right?
Didn't you say October-ish, Jeff?
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
gonna be
I
on there
told
with- He's going to have me and Scott Gibson, who played Akat Kaldane in the Pacific. We're going to be together on that. Taco and I talked for quite a while. It's been several weeks ago when this first got lined up because, we had a lot to talk about. He was kind of pretty stoked about getting to do this. But, the We Happy Few 506, we've got our next event coming up, and it'll be a live event. That will be on the first week of October. So that should be pretty cool. The guy who played Basselin's best friend, Josh Bitton, he was on we had a Zoom meeting with him the week before last and just kind of hashed some things out. He seems like a pretty cool guy. So
Is
I
he the
think
one who
that'll
played J.P. Morgan?
Yes, he played J.P. Morgan.
Yeah, I just saw him on an episode of Lucifer last night where he played a ATF sniper. I was like, that's the cat who played J.P. Morgan on the Pacific.
Yeah, really cool guy. I mean, he wasn't even part of the Sledge story arc.
Yeah.
And yet, I popped up and he's like, Henry, man, your dad's book was fantastic. It's so cool to meet you,
Is he from Boston?
that's awesome.
He's got like the Boston. Is he from Boston? Where's he from?
Well, he's from New York, actually.
Oh, okay.
He lives in L.A. now, but he is, I think, originally from New York.
I got you.
Really cool guy. So, and I think there are going to be a lot more people jumping on the We Happy Few Pacific bandwagon. I had a conversation with a guy, and this is something I don't want to get into right now because I want to see where it goes. But to you especially, Jeff, if you like, we love the World War II airplanes. So I may have something to, and maybe even a potential guest pursuant to that.
Sounds like a plan. Yeah, I mean, definitely. Jeff, you're probably from. Do you know where the concept of the 21 gun salute came from?
Oh man. No, I couldn't tell you off the top of my head.
There's a cool cat on TikTok named Preston. He does like these quick 30-second, 1 minute history lessons. And I heard this one, and I didn't know this. And so I'm going to play it for you guys real quick. It's like it's 45 seconds long. But here's a quick 45-second lesson on the 21 gun salute. It's going to start because it's playing, and then I'll replay it. So
as a response,
here we go.
The 21 gun salute is often seen in military funerals and events around the world. It's got some cool history. Originally, it comes from the concept of placing yourself in an unarmed position as a sign of respect to those being honored. The version we know today, with 21 rounds being fired, started when warships would enter an enemy port. While they were still a ways from shore, the ships would fire off every one of their cannons. They usually had 7. And with how long it took to reload, it was a way of saying, we come in peace. As a response, the shore batteries, which usually had more ammunition on hand, fired 21 rounds, 3 for every 1 coming from the ship. The 21-gun salute has since been adopted by countries all around the world as a sign of respect. From the United States to China, the United Kingdom to Russia, and quite a few more.
So that's interesting that these old naval ships, when coming into an enemy port and they're saying, hey, we're not here to fight, they would basically just unload all their guns at one time and say, hey, here we are. We have no way to protect ourselves in the amount of time it would take to reload all these cannons. And so the port would do the same thing. They would fire off all theirs. So now you have your enemy and 2 enemies with no loaded weapons. It's kind of a way to say, okay, let's have a peace talk, if you will.
That's pretty cool. I did not know that that's where it came from. I know if you've ever heard of the Patrick O'Brien books, the Jack Aubrey books, it's Napoleonic Wars, 1800s, Royal Navy sailing ships. So Master and Commander was based on those books. The movie with Russell Crowe.
Sure.
But they talk a lot about every time they sail into a foreign port based on the rank of the ship going in, they would fire a certain number of guns, and then it was expected that the fort would fire that many guns in return. And it was like a big deal if they didn't. Like the Royal Navy would get extremely upset if they fired a salute and it was not returned.
Yeah.
So,
and I guess now you know why, because if you're not returning it, that means they got loaded armament pointing at you and they could take you out if they so desired. But I think unless you guys have anything else covered, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. You got anything you need to put out there, Jeff?
No. Look forward to the next episode. Good seeing you guys again. Mike, thanks a lot for coming on and showing off some of your grandfather's stuff. That's a really cool lineage that you've got there and heritage, and we appreciate you sharing it with us on our podcast.
Thanks for having me, gentlemen.
Yeah, thanks, Mike.
Our pleasure. And as always, thank you to Jeff and Henry for doing what you're doing and contributing to the show and helping making the show a more well-rounded show. And see how many times I can say show in one sentence. We'll just top it off with one more. This is the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast show. Thank you guys so much for hanging out with us. And as always, this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast is brought to you by our friends at Computers. At Computers has been providing IT solutions for Southwest Florida since 2004 and the rest of the world since, 2010. So even if you don't live in Southwest Florida, they can help you as long as your internet works, of course. They can remote into your computer via their website with your instruction and help you with all your minor computer problems. And if you do live in Southwest Florida, then give them a call. They can help you with computer repair, laptop repair, anything technical based, networks, network expansion, Wi-Fi, etc. Give them a call at 239-283-1120. And if you're watching this live stream or you're watching on YouTube 2 days later, if you want one of those kick-ass WTSP shirts like Jeff is wearing, head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com, click on our merch link, use the promo code ILISTEN. Yes, with inflation, the prices have gone up, but not by us, but by the people who make them. And that I Listen will basically save you the shipping cost, and it'll help support the show because we want you to help get the word out, word of mouth. We have actually a pretty wide range of shirts on there, so please go check those out. And while you're on our website, if you want to help support the show and all the shows here on the Digital 410 Network, sign up for Patreon. It's only $1 a month. There is a $7.50 a month plan. If you want to sign up for that, you'll get a free t-shirt after your second month. And we oftentimes will give our OG5 members, that's what we refer to the people on Patreon, free stickers and what have you. And there's also an exclusive OG5 podcast that is only behind the paywall. I got to get Jeff and Henry on there. But we've got all the plugs out of the way. Thank you guys so much. And remember, if you're listening to us on Apple iTunes or Apple Podcasts, please give us a review. The higher the review, the higher the stars, Apple will suggest us to other people who listen to history podcasts. So for Henry, Jeff, and Mike, this is Don Abernathy, and we will talk to you all next week.
This has been a Digital 410 production.
We're off the air. Boy, it was nice not to have to